So, in a lot of my past videos, I've talked about how I thought that Microsoft's strategy was something that is sound and is working. This is because in the space that Microsoft is venturing into, which is providing games delivery service, many other providers are not necessarily on that level. Neither are they at the point where they can actually shell out the kind of money that Microsoft is willing to spend on Xbox to be able to bring them to a dominant position or a much stronger position in the gaming industry. Now, they've always been in a strong position. I think a lot of people have just misconstrued a lot of the, numbers, and the games media and a lot of voices out there don't necessarily resonate everything that Xbox has been doing, because Xbox has had a dry spell of delivering a lot of video games, or at least making noise about the video games it's delivered in the last few years. This is, in a sense true, because most of the games that Sony PlayStation delivered in the PlayStation 4 era, these games really did resonate with a lot of people, and the high quality in terms of cinematic and production and all that really did signal to people that this company was very serious. And on the other side of Xbox, they weren't really doing that. Plus, PlayStation had a way of getting a lot of these third party deals. And so, it really did make their position look much better every single time. However, in this new generation, it seems like Microsoft is not going to be taking any more nonsense. They've decided that they're going to throw the kitchen sink full of dollars at the whole gaming scene, and they're going to make it really impactful overall. So when we started to see, a lot of what Game Pass was offering, a lot of people still, they seem skeptic. But just recently, Phil Spencer, pretty much confirmed in an interview that Game Pass has spent about $1 billion a year to bring content to a lot of people. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, the official Game Pass numbers are not known. However, we got to see some numbers a while back. In Brazil, one of their economic agencies put together a report based on what Microsoft had given them in terms of data, and that went out to the public. In that report, there were numbers of Game Pass subscribers that were actually there, and it was over 20 million. So those were the numbers that we had in regard to what we had seen. In the Activision case, Jim Ryan comes out and talks about how, Game Pass had about 29 million or so subscribers and so on and so forth. These were just a few things that we got to see, in that period. So we can actually say from these numbers that it appears that Game Pass is able to bring about $3 billion of revenue. When you look at the overhead that's being cited in the article, which is about $1 billion or more for video games, and then maybe you throw in, say, other infrastructure, Game Pass has at least $1 billion in profitability. If you want to actually come in and claim that overhead and hosting Game Pass is more expensive than that, you really have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to come up with these numbers, because what I'm basing our numbers on so far is the fact that Microsoft already has an infrastructure that it uses to host games. So that's basically something where you can sell games, it can give out games on Xbox or the former Xbox Live Gold, which is now Game Pass Core, and so on and so forth. So the overhead to run Game Pass, in my opinion, has never necessarily been a thing that I thought was going to be much more of a task for Microsoft. They own a lot of server infrastructure. They can, host and create and secure more users and more accounts. So that's not necessarily, or has never necessarily been, a big deal for them overall. So when you think about all of this, it seems like this strategy is working because no one is actually playing on the same level field as they are. And, at the end of the day, you really have to come in and take this into consideration when you're looking at how the console providers are actually going about things. And I said this before, just because of the way you're starting to see the way that Microsoft's Xbox is going, a lot of the third-party benefits that Sony's PlayStation has enjoyed for the last few years are eventually going to start waning away, because now there's a huge struggle and a huge fight for who can actually get the dollars out of you, because a lot of video games are going to have already poured out in 2023, and we're going to see a lot more pour out in 2024. And I'll tell you why. If you think about 2023, most of these games, as a result of being delayed during 2020, when we had, the huge medical issue in the world, and so most of them eventually had gotten their finish, they had reached their finishing line by 2022, 2023. So most of them just decided they were going to drop these games on those dates. even as we were starting to see things heat up, some games decided that they were going to move into 2024, like Banishers. This is a game that's actually being made by Dontnod, which is a very strong studio. I think it's Dontnod that's making Banishers. If it's not, please correct me in the comment section. And so they're moving their release to 2024 because they said specifically this year has a lot of really good games, and they decided that they would do that so that their game can get the attention that it needs. Also, when you look at GTA 6 coming in 2025, 2024 is the window where a lot of games really need to put out some work. I still think that Wolverine can come out in 2024. Some people don't believe me, but you really have to be very careful, because if Sony knows that they want to leverage that game, they would bring that game out as quickly as possible. As much as, it's in reality that the game is done. I'm not saying they need to go ahead and bring out a half-baked game. I'm just saying if they were targeting 2025, 2024 might be the valuable option that they need to go for. So this is just my understanding, and this is just my analysis of the matter. But when you kind of take into account the fact that a lot of games are making their way to Game Pass, even because of the saturation that is out here, like Remnant of the Ashes, basically the second game just recently had a shadow drop on Game Pass after it released at a multi-plat game. And then even when you look at Starfield has now achieved over 12 million players, which the truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, some people say the strangest things. They say, oh, it's players, but it's not gamers. But the reality of the matter is Game Pass subscribers are already covering a lot of those costs. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter, right? And even when you think about it, a lot of the gamers who paid for Starfield paid for the early access package on Game Pass. So even with their $16 or $12 or $8 subscription, whatever it is, most of them still upspent and spent an extra $30 in addition to their Game Pass subscription. So if you took those $30 spends from them, it still added an extra, revenue stream for Bethesda games, which is under Xbox, to be able to make more money. So I think Starfield is eventually going to continue to grow, and we're going to see the game hit 20 million players by next year, because this is a game that they've seen has a lot of potential. Forget about the negativity surrounding this game. Microsoft's Xbox knows that they're committed to wanting this game to be the next 10-year game. This is what Phil Spencer has said. The game is going to have DLC. The game is going to have a lot of content that's going to be coming pretty soon. So I won't be surprised if by the time people are starting to eventually, in a sense, realize what's going on, because eventually they're going to realize it. They're going to eventually come around and say, oh, Starfield is the game that we're playing right now, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of the day, you're going to see a very huge change of tone and a huge change of conversations, because, people are still talking about Starfield. Even if many of them may be talking about it in a negative or a positive light, they still are talking about Starfield. Whereas Marvel Spider-Man 2, which many had claimed was going to be a one and done, is a one and done. It was an 11-hour game, and it's already done. RPGs have this longevity that action-adventure games cannot necessarily compete with. Look at Cyberpunk 2077. The game is getting nominated for the Player's Choice Award, which is kind of weird and wonky, but whatever. I mean, it's just the nature of these kinds of games. They have this, playable factor that actually goes with them, and a lot of people really do enjoy them, overall. But these are my thoughts. I really do think that, the entire strategy that Xbox Games is putting in place, in my opinion, is something that everyone is going to have to contend with in one way or the other. They seem to have a lot of different, they were doing these things in the past and not releasing games. And a lot of people were kind of wondering, what are these things? What is the end to all of this? Cloud gaming and all of that stuff. But now that we're starting to see a lot of publishers leverage this, oh my gosh, it seems like it's coming together in a very interesting way. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Those of you who, are looking into this ecosystem, who are part of this ecosystem, and that is Game Pass and so on and so forth, what it has to offer. What do you think about everything that Xbox has done this particular generation so far? Do you think they're actually making enough dent in the industry? I think they are. I think they're making a bigger dent than I would have even envisioned. But I guess other people, can get to share their opinions and their thoughts about all of this. So thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.